We all remember this, right? A charming prince, a dagger that could rewind time, a storybook adventure. Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time is a certified classic. It's a fairy tale that pretty much defined a whole generation of action-adventure games. It was elegant, it was whimsical, and it told its story like a grandfather reading from an old, dusty book. But what if I told you the real masterpiece wasn't the fairy tale, but the nightmare that came next? Taking place 7 years after Sands of Time, Ubisoft decided to trade all that charm for something darker, angrier, and frankly a whole lot more brilliant. Everyone remembers the first game, but today, I'm going to prove why its brutal sequel, Warrior Within, was the true triumph in both storytelling and combat, and why it's the one that truly deserves to be called a masterpiece. It's time to challenge popular opinion. Let's start this retrospective by tackling the weakest entry in the trilogy, Prince of Persia, The Two Thrones. Now, let's be clear. Third place in this trilogy is like getting a bronze medal at the Olympics. It's still a phenomenal game. The Two Thrones had the massive job of wrapping up one of the most beloved stories of its generation, and for the most part, it pulls it off. It brings the prince's journey full circle, delivering a solid conclusion that calls back to the structure of Sands of Time, with the prince once again telling us his story. The best thing about this game is, without a doubt, the Dark Prince. This mechanic, where the prince transforms into his sand-corrupted alter ego, is a brilliant way to show his inner conflict. It's the physical form of the darkness that's been haunting him since the first game, and the banter between the prince's two halves adds a fantastic new layer to his character. The Dark Prince isn't just a gimmick either. His gameplay, built around a deadly whip chain, opens up new ways to platform and fight. The game also introduced speed kills, a stealth system that lets you take down enemies with a single, cinematic move. When it works, it feels incredibly satisfying, making you feel like a silent predator. The music is also a huge plus, blending the tones of the first two games perfectly. However, The Two Thrones is ultimately held back because it just feels unpolished. While speed kills are a great idea, the regular combat feels like a step backward. Enemies are spongy, and the acrobatic depth that made the last game so amazing is noticeably toned down. The parkour, while still good, feels less reliable, and new additions like springboards don't always work as smoothly as you'd want. Visually, the game looks strangely rough in places, and the boss fights are a huge letdown. They're often simplistic, poorly designed, and force you to use the speed kill mechanic to get to the next phase of the fight. The game also completely wastes the potential of characters like Kylena, who is tragically killed off early in a move that still feels like a massive mistake. Just imagine how much more interesting the prince's inner conflict could have been if Kylena's death would have come later in the story, if, while chasing to rescue her, the prince would realize he still had feelings for Farah. Struggling between love, guilt, and duty could have been really something. Or just imagine if you did spend an entire game chasing after Kylena, only for her to die, let's say, somewhere at the 90% of the game, and have you spend the last 10% in an uncontrollable rage in the Dark Prince form, only to be brought back by Farah's intervention. Leaving fanfiction territory and getting back to the matter at hand, The Two Thrones is a good game that gives the saga the closure it needed. It finds a balance between the tones of the first two games and wraps things up nicely. But it's always living in the shadow of its older brothers, feeling more like a collection of great ideas that just needed more time in the oven. It's a worthy ending, but it's not the trilogy's high point. Moving on to the game that started it all, the legend, Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. For so many of us, this wasn't just a game, it was a magical experience. It came out in 2003 and just completely blindsided everyone. It's a game that still mesmerizes you with its enchanting fairy tale atmosphere, its iconic soundtrack, and its gorgeous art style that looks like it was ripped straight from the pages of 1001 Nights. It's hard to overstate how much Sands of Time changed gaming. It was the first time most of us ever saw a character run along a wall, and it wove that incredible parkour into everything from exploration to puzzles. But the true masterstroke was the Dagger of Time. Being able to rewind time wasn't just a cool gimmick, it fundamentally changed how we approached challenges. A missed jump wasn't a frustrating trip back to a checkpoint anymore. It was a momentary slip-up, a lesson learned, and instantly fixed with the press of a button. This mechanic empowered you, encouraging you to take risks and experiment. The story it told was just as brilliant. The charming, arrogant prince, the capable and witty Farah, and the slow-burn romance that builds between them is the absolute heart of the game. It's a simple story, but it's told with so much sincerity. And that ending, that poignant, bittersweet conclusion that makes you question everything you just spent hours doing, is one of the most powerful endings in video game history. So why isn't it the best one? Because, as revolutionary as it was, Sands of Time was still a blueprint. It had flaws that would be fixed later. The combat, while it worked, was easily the weakest part of the game. And we have to talk about Farah. We all loved her. but her uncanny ability to walk straight into your sword, get instantly mobbed by enemies, or somehow turn you into a hedgehog by planting arrows in your back was a constant headache. Those finicky flying enemies were also a real pain that broke the game's otherwise perfect flow. Sands of Time is a masterpiece of design, a near-perfect adventure that laid the foundation for everything that followed. It created the magic, but it wasn't the final trick. It was the opening act for something even better. And now it's time to talk about the crown jewel. Alright, first things first, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the tone. Warrior Within was, and still is, a controversial game because of its massive shift. It threw out the vibrant colors and magical atmosphere for a dark, gothic island blasting heavy metal. A lot of people saw this as a betrayal, a cheap attempt to chase the edgy trend of the mid-2000s. But if that's all you see, you're only looking at the surface. That tonal shift wasn't just for looks, it was absolutely necessary for the story. The game picks up 7 years after the Sands of Time. The prince is no longer some naive kid who made one big mistake, he's a hunted man. For 7 straight years, he's been chased by the Dahaka, a terrifying, unstoppable guardian of the timeline sent to literally wipe him from existence for messing with time. He's exhausted, paranoid, and completely desperate. The charming, witty prince is long gone, replaced by a grim, hardened survivor. This personality change is the direct result of his journey. I mean, wouldn't you be a little angry if a demigod of fate was breathing down your neck 24/7? The game's dark atmosphere, the brooding art style, and even the aggressive Godsmack soundtrack, it's all there to reflect the prince's inner torment. This isn't a fun adventure anymore. It's a desperate fight for survival against a fate that's already been written. So, to criticize the edginess is to miss the entire point. Ubisoft didn't just make the prince darker for the heck of it. They showed us what 7 years of being hunted by destiny does to a person. It was a bold, mature evolution for the character that set the stage for a game that respected its players enough to tell a complicated and challenging story. While Sands of Time was revolutionary for its platforming, let's be honest, the combat was pretty simple. It got repetitive fast, usually just a few simple moves to knock an enemy down so you could retrieve their sand. It worked, but it was never the main attraction. Warrior Within changed all of that. It introduced the freeform fighting system, which for once was a marketing buzzword that actually lived up to the hype. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a total overhaul that turned combat from a chore into the game's most exhilarating feature. The system is incredibly deep, giving you a huge arsenal of moves. You could dual-wield weapons, grabbing an enemy's sword and seamlessly working it into your combos. You could use the environment, kicking off walls for powerful attacks, or swinging around pillars to slice through a whole crowd. The variety is just staggering. You can vault over an enemy, slow down time in midair to slash them from behind, steal their weapon as you land, and then chuck that weapon at another guy across the room. The system begs you to be creative, making every single fight feel like a unique, brutal ballet. While Sands of Time combat felt like rock, paper, scissors, Warrior Within's is a fluid, expressive dance of death. This system demanded skill, standing shoulder to shoulder with giants of the genre like Devil May Cry and God of War. Warrior Within's combat was the main event, a complex and deeply satisfying system that's still one of the best in any action-adventure game. Warrior Within's genius goes way beyond just the fighting. The entire game is set on the Island of Time, one huge, interconnected world, which was already a big step up from the linear levels of the first game. But the real masterstroke was the dual timeline mechanic. Using special portals, the prince can travel between the island's beautiful, lush past and its crumbling, ruined present. This created a very interesting experience where you had to explore and solve puzzles in a totally new way. A huge gap you can't cross in the present might have been a sturdy bridge in the past. A locked door in the past might be a crumbled wall in the present. The game constantly makes you think in 4 dimensions, navigating not just space, but time itself. Seeing a grand hall in its pristine past, only to return later to its ruins, creates this haunting sense of history and makes the Island of Time feel like a real place. Now, a lot of critics at the time didn't like all the backtracking this created, but I'm going to be honest, I loved it. It forced me to learn the island inside and out, and I got a huge kick out of exploring the same location from different perspectives. You'd notice small details, like a recently broken wall in the present. And then hours later, you'd realize you were the cause when the Dahaka smashes through that same spot while chasing you in the past. It turns the backtracking into a brilliant storytelling tool, making the island feel like a living witness to your desperate journey. And you can't talk about the island without mentioning its scariest resident. The Dahaka chase sequences are legendary for a reason. These moments are a perfect blend of story, level design, and gameplay. You can't fight the Dahaka, you can only run. The screen goes gray, The music gets intense, and you're thrown into a frantic, high-stakes platforming challenge where one mistake means you're dead. These chases perfectly capture the game's theme of desperation, testing your mastery of the platforming controls under extreme pressure. The feeling of relief when you finally reach a waterfall, the Dahaka's only weakness, is something you never forget. Where the Sands of Time was a love story, Warrior Within is a tragedy. It's a dark, fatalistic story about one man's struggle against the inevitable. The prince isn't trying to save a kingdom or a princess, he's just trying not to die. Some people criticize this selfish motivation, but that's exactly what makes the story so gripping. It's deeply personal. The island's non-linear design, where you have to activate 2 towers to reach the Empress of Time's throne room, reinforces this personal journey. You're given a goal, but you have to carve out the path to get there yourself. Along the way, you meet characters like Kailina and Shadi, who complicate the prince's mission and make him question his own motives. The game's ambition is shown best in its 2 endings. The standard ending is bleak, basically saying that you can't change your fate no matter what. But if you take the time to explore the island and find all the hidden life upgrades, you get a secret weapon and a true final boss fight against the Dahaka itself. After spending the whole game running from this thing, the game finally gives you the power to stand and fight. This alternate true ending, where the prince successfully defies his destiny, feels earned in a way few games ever manage. It rewards your dedication with more than just a cutscene. It delivers a fundamental shift in the game's entire message. If you've only played the Sands of Time, or if you wrote off Warrior Within back in the day, because of the tone, I'm telling you to give it another shot. Look past the new metal and the gruff voice acting, and you'll find a game with an incredible amount of depth. Warrior Within took every single idea from its predecessor and cranked it to 11. The platforming is faster and more complex. The world is more ambitious and interconnected, and the combat is, without a doubt, a masterpiece of its genre. This wasn't some misguided attempt to be edgy, it was a brave and brilliant evolution that told a darker, more mature story. Everyone remembers the fairy tale, but it was the nightmare that perfected the formula. The Sands of Time laid the foundation, but Warrior Within built a bloody, brilliant, and brutal masterpiece on top of it. It's the true high point of the series, and one of the greatest action games ever made. For a moment, it looked like we were going to get a remake of this amazing trilogy, and everyone was hyped. But when they started releasing teasers from the remade Sands of Time, the hype was gone and people started to worry. It looked like it wasn't made with its existing fans in mind, but completely remade for what creators are referring to as modern audiences. The game kept getting delayed, possibly because of the negative reactions to all the leaks and teases, and eventually, it was canceled. I kept hope. Even through all the noise and negativity, I wanted a good remaster of this trilogy. But now I think I, like many others, was in the wrong mindset. We wanted a remaster, but Ubisoft wanted a complete remake. And judging by Ubisoft's track record of the past few years, maybe it's better that they canceled it. But that's just my opinion. I hope at least I managed to convince some of you that Warrior Within is the true masterpiece of the trilogy. But if not, I hope this video at least gives you a reason to revisit it. Do you agree with my take, or am I completely wrong? What's your ranking of the trilogy? Drop it in the comments and let's settle this debate. And don't forget, if you enjoy this type of content or uninterrupted gameplay videos, hit that like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to enable notifications so you don't miss the next video.